What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another Wild Rift video. I'm Kangas, and today I'm going over 10 mistakes that every low elo player makes. If you're struggling to move up the ladder, chances are it's because of some of these. So hit that sub button and let's get into it. First up is an extremely simple mistake that, when fixed, will provide immediate results. Stop trying out new champs in ranked, and try to play the champions that you're most comfortable with. Low elo players tend to overestimate how good they are at the game and assume that they can pilot any simple champion. However, there's plenty of intricacies to every champion in the game, and if you first-time champions in ranked, you will find yourself losing a lot of games. It's best to stick to champions that you know better so that you can dedicate more of your brainpower to focusing on the rest of the game. If you're playing a champion that you don't know, you have to think very hard about how you're using your abilities, what you're building, what you're maxing, and so on. If you're on a comfort champion, you already know what you're doing, and you can think about counterplaying enemy champions, how you want to play the map, and larger macro concepts. When you're trying to win games, it's so important to make it easy for yourself to climb. And this one is super simple to remove as an obstacle from your path up the ladder. Stick to unranked games if you want to try out new champs, where you can push your limits and learn the ins and outs without your rank being at stake. The next mistake that low elo players often make is sticking to the items that are recommended to you and not trying anything else. While the items recommended are usually fine, like 9 times out of 10 they're going to be good, they're not updated very frequently and they will usually be behind the meta on optimal itemization. They also don't account for what champions you're facing against and what items you will need from game to game. It's a valuable skill to be able to assess the game and figure out the optimal itemization for it, and it's even more important to be able to adapt to it on the fly to deal with changing threats. You should be practicing this every game, and sticking to the recommended items stunts your learning and will often leave you with a mediocre build. If you want to carry games, make sure to do your research and stay up to date on what the best items are for your champ. Bad builds is another extremely avoidable obstacle that will hinder your climb if you don't deal with it right now. So make sure to get on top of your builds and make sure that they're best that they can be. And hey, you can also join our ProGuides Wild Rift Discord in the description below to talk to our community and pros about builds. And also make sure to sub to keep up to date with our guides and tips. Alright, once you make sure that you got your builds in pristine condition, the next thing to keep in mind is how much gold is in your back pocket. Low elo players will often not spend their gold frequently enough, causing them to be way weaker than they should be. On the Wild Rift, gold alone does not do anything for you. Once you return to base and exchange it for the items, that's when it makes you more powerful. So you should make sure that you're doing this before you take important fights. It's really easy to get absorbed in your laning phase and forget how much money you're sitting on, so make sure to check in regularly and think about what the best time is to return to base and spend it. Making sure that you've spent your gold before big objectives spawn or any team fights occur is vital. If you've just spent your gold, you're giving yourself the best chance at winning the fight. This is even more important when you're winning, as you'll feel like you want to just fight everything and everyone, but if you don't actually spend your gold that you're getting, it's just going to keep piling up while the enemy team spends theirs and gets stronger. Remember, gold doesn't do damage, so make sure it's not burning a hole in your pocket and is actually put to use. Before we get to the rest of the video, our question of the day is, what ability do you find the hardest to play against? I'm a support main who doesn't really pay that much attention in lane. I prefer to roam around, help out my team, and make shot calls around the map. This makes it really hard to lane against Blitzcrank and his hook in particular, because sometimes I'll be looking at the mini-map, trying to tell my jungler where to go, and then I just die. But let me know your answer in the comments down below. The next mistake that low elo players often make is being overly passive and indecisive. It's really hard to learn what you can and can't do if you don't make decisions quickly and aggressively. In the short term, making aggressive plays will probably give you more deaths when you're overextended, but over time, you'll become a better player because of it. It's like Saiyans, the more they get beat, the stronger they get, right? Now, this doesn't mean that you should take every fight you see and always dive in whenever you can. You should still try and make the best decisions that you can, and if that means that you concede minions while you're scaling up to your power spike, then yeah, sure, do that. However, if you see an opportunity, you should never hesitate. If you think you can make a play, try it out, and either it works and you know that it works, or it doesn't work and now you're better for next time. And if you don't want to test your limits in ranked games, considering playing some unranked games extremely aggressively instead. However, ranked games will always be of a higher level of competition, and you'll always learn far more from them. Don't shy away from being aggressive in ranked, and if you keep trying to learn, you'll guarantee to climb eventually. On the Wild Rift, objectives are very important, and making sure that your gameplay prioritizes them is crucial for winning your games. Yeah, Wild Rift games are extremely scrappy. Ultimately though, the game isn't only about fighting. Making sure that you're playing for the next objective is the most important thing that you should be focusing on inside of the game, and should always be on your mind. Often though, I see lower elo players not rotating to dragons or barons before they spawn. If you're not there as it respawns, the enemy team has the opportunity to rush it down before you can arrive. It's also important to try to arrive just before it spawns so that if the enemy team tries to walk in, you can punish them by engaging on them when they're out of position. Fighting over objectives is also one of the best ways to get good fights going for your team. If you get into the river around Dragon while the enemy team is still in their lanes, they may walk in to contest. If they're walking into you, they probably don't have vision, and you can choose your moment to engage freely. On the other side of the coin, it's also important to contest objectives. Often, teams will be too focused on the objective and group up, allowing you to land massive wombo combos and wipe them out cleanly. Lastly, from towers to dragons to heralds to baron, objectives are extremely powerful and can prop you up to win games easily if you prioritize them. The buffs from dragon are really strong and will make it way easier for your team to play out the game. Baron buff is crazy, and ultimately, the only way to win the game is to take out their towers. You can farm as many kills as you want, get as rich as you want, but if you don't try to break their base, well, you're never gonna win. Make sure to always be thinking about objectives and make them your #1 priority. And the next mistake we're going over is not looking at the minimap enough. For people new to the game, paying attention to the minimap can be pretty difficult, I understand. However, it is essential to absorb as much information as you can, and the minimap is one of the most useful tools in your arsenal. When you're distracted by other things like controlling your champion or playing out your lane, it can be really easy to just ignore the minimap entirely. Unfortunately though, on the Wild Rift, it's never 1v1. If you lose focus, you're gonna get ganked and it's gonna make you sad. Paying attention to the minimap is the #1 fix to getting ganked. It's honestly pretty broken. You can always know where your jungler is, and you can have a reasonable guess where the enemy jungler is too. If the enemy mid disappears, you can back off because you're watching the minimap. If your jungler is coming to gank, you can engage because you're watching the minimap. The level of awareness that you can achieve by simply watching the minimap as much as you can is incredible and totally underutilized by low-level players. While most players do check the minimap occasionally, the best players are always checking it before they engage or every other second. Making sure that all the enemies are accounted for keeps you safe from surprise ganks and other potential mishaps. In short, check the minimap, save your own life, win the game. And the next mistake is a big one for a lot of the player base, but it's especially prevalent in lower elos. Chatting, more often than not, is kinda useless and can be really detrimental to your gameplay. It's hard to use, distracts you from the game, and very rarely will anything useful ever be discussed. It's just filled with flame and useless information, and will likely just bait you into an argument instead of enlighten you with a game plan. We have a more in-depth video on why chatting is bad on the channel already, so check it out if you want to know more about this topic. Something that's extremely obvious to high elo players when they watch lower elo players is the complete lack of vision control on the Wild Rift. First of all, it's important to always be using up your wards so that you have the most information you can. Knowing everything about the map makes your decision making way easier, so drop your wards. I mean it. However, while lack of vision is a problem, the second part of vision control is the important part. Control, in the context of the Wild Rift, refers to spending time in the places where you do have vision placed and where the enemies do not. If they wish to enter an area they do not have vision in, they gotta face check. If they face check, you kill them very easily. Making sure to stand in your vision and punish the enemy team as they walk in is one of the most fundamental plays on the Wild Rift, and will become increasingly important as you climb the ladder. Another large mistake that low elo players make is not trying to control the waves whatsoever. While this is a pretty high level concept, it can be extremely useful and generate really large advantages with kind of minimal interaction with the enemy champion. The minions are very powerful on the Wild Rift, and if manipulated well, can create a similar amount of pressure as an entire other champion. If left alone, they will beat down towers and make far more progress than you could ever imagine. The important thing you're going to want to do is push your waves before you fight at objectives. If you leave the wave closer to your base, it's going to be reinforced faster, stack up, and slowly push towards the enemy base. This is referred to as a slow push, and whenever the waves don't meet in the middle of the lane, this will always happen. If the wave is on the enemy side of the map as you fight, it's good for you. They'll be missing minions, and after the fight, you can return to collect the wave that has slow pushed back to you. Later on in the game, you can intentionally create slow pushes by slightly thinning out the enemy minion wave when it's on your side, and then moving to the objective. This wave will become larger and larger, eventually crashing into the enemy base with force. This isn't great if the enemy team can collect it, as you've now lost gold since your minion waves killed minions that you could have been farming. However, if you can rotate to Baron and force the enemy team to respond, it is immensely powerful. There's heaps of different ways you can control the waves, and the two we mentioned are definitely not the only techniques, so make sure to stay aware of the wave state and try some of these out for yourselves. And the last mistake relates to the wave control point, and that is not abusing numbers advantage. When you push a wave in, someone on the enemy team has to go collect it, or they're losing out on gold and XP. When they show under the tower, you can use this window to engage on the enemy team with a numbers advantage. Similarly, if they don't show on the wave, you can just relax as they're losing golden XP. You can rinse and repeat this for free advantages, and if the enemy team doesn't understand what's going on, it's just extremely easy to do.
Keep in mind, summoners, knowing about these mechanics is only the first step. You gotta grind some games so you can actually put that knowledge into practice. But if you want even more knowledge, make sure to hit like and subscribe for everything Wild Rift in the future. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to join our Wild Rift Discord down below and answer our question of the day. But that's it for today's video. So as always, best of luck on the Rift, stay hydrated, and I'll see you next time.